Hi, this is Malika of Evanston Live TV, Channel 6, and I have with me in the house today Mr. Kenneth Wesbrooks, founder and chairman of A Work of Faith. Yes, welcome, welcome.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yes, Mr. Wesbrooks. I mean, every time I have sat down in a meeting with you, I have walked away with some gold nuggets in my pockets. You always share some wisdom about the Black community, and I just want to say thank you. Thank you always.
Well, thank you for sharing with us, and thank you for being a part of the work that we're trying to continue in this community.
You and I worked on part of the series, Community Conversations, and we dealt with institutional racism. It was a pretty successful event. I wish more people of color would have come out, but I think people are tired of conversation. What's your thought on that?
I agree. People are tired of conversation. They see things as all talk, no action. But in some cases, the gathering of information comes through these conversations that we host. It is actually a gathering of information and being able to formulate a plan for action based on the needs and the desires of the community.
Now, that event that I was a moderator, and I mean, we had a phenomenal panel, and it was all about action. Everybody in that room took action leaving there.
Exactly.
And that's what made your community conversation event so much different than others that I've attended in Evanston. Everybody took action. We had Chris Shuttleworth from Poor People's Campaign. We had City Clerk Devon Reed. We had Professor Lisa Dish. We had former Governor Pat Quinn. We had historian of Shorefront, Dino Robinson.
Yes, yes.
And I mean, everybody on that panel was just, they made people move because people saw them as a movement. They took action, so it made everyone in that room believe, I can do something.
Exactly.
From my little corner of the world, I can do something.
It's important that we have persons that not only share information, but are able to initiate action. We want people that are going to move and inspire movement. Just like in any worship service, if in the faith-based community, we don't just want to talk to people, but we want to inspire an action. We want to inspire some type of growth, development, and some initiative that takes place based on what has been heard. So these community conversations are designed to inspire action in the community. We don't just want to share and repeat and re-diagnose the issue. We actually want to take an action, move forward, and work to eliminate, in most cases, whatever the problem is we're dealing with.
Now, you have another event coming up. It's a part 2 to the series, dealing in housing here in Evanston. Well, housing, period.
Correct.
Period. So give the people a little bit about what your vision is for this next coming event.
The next event deals with, again, understanding institutional racism, but we want to focus more so on racism when it comes to housing. Some of the things that have transpired in the past and some of the things that are still transpiring that are prohibiting families from being successful in their communities. And even in 2019, families are still prohibited from living where they want to. A lot of times the barriers and boundaries come both in financial barriers, boundaries, as well as some intellectual ones based on the community desires and the community makeup that the persons would want to live in. And it makes it increasingly difficult for certain families to find a level of comfort in some communities.
That's interesting. I remember when I first moved back to Evanston not too long ago, I sat down with a non-African American woman, and we had coffee at a restaurant here, and I told her, I believe black people are being priced out of Evanston. And she was like, that's ridiculous. Why would you think such a thing? You know, why would you say something like that? That's absurd, you know. Do you think there are people still in Evanston who think that we're like paranoid or that this isn't real, or what are your thoughts?
Most definitely. I'm sure that people believe that it's a false cry wolf, an exaggeration, a misrepresentation. But I've even recently seen an article that indicated that there's definitely no gentrification going on in Evanston. However,
What article was that?
That's a good question. And so it's amazing that understanding that rents can be prohibitive and price increases on rental units, the inability to find affordable housing, and even in the new established building where a percentage of those units are supposed to be affordable housing, but who defines what's affordable? Affordable based on whose income? Affordable based on the rents in the building, or affordable based on the median income of the residents in the community? So that's a question that needs to be answered sometimes, and it's not a direct prohibition. It's not a direct stoppage for people to vote on these issues or to be able to move forward in these issues. But what does happen is families can't afford the rents. Families are moving out for the rents. As a matter of fact, I left Evanston myself when my children were younger because we were able to get more bang for our buck in Chicago for the prices and the cost that we were paying in Evanston.
So what do you think we can do? What can we do?
I think first understanding that the development of new housing opportunities in Evanston should come with a level of community input that says how many of these units, based on the median income of the residents in Evanston, are actually affordable for the residents. How many of the units are going to be available, and any new development comes up with input from the community members. And there are also, we are trying to do a financial literacy campaign which deals with credit repair, real credit repair, not quick fix credit repair, but real credit repair, and financial literacy and home buyer seminars. If more were able to buy homes in the city, if homes were affordable, that also makes things a lot simpler for the residents to obtain homes and then become real members of the community. Homeowners, property owners, gives a sense of pride and a sense of community spirit where renting isn't always quite the same. There's still that little intangible about renters that don't have a real stake in the community. Sometimes that home ownership gives you more of a vested interest in the best outcomes for the community.
I was talking to a very well-to-do non-African American, and she said when you say the word affordable housing, she said, you know, that's like dog whistle to my community. That, you know, a certain group of people are going to move into the neighborhood. And what are your thoughts on that?
It can mean, it can give that inference that low to middle income families are going to come into a community. It can mean that persons moved from, we could say, projects are being moved, in their case, up to a better class neighborhood and community. But a lot of times there has been no education and support systems in place for persons that have had to find a coping mechanism in their previous community. They bring a lot of those habits into their new community. And without relationship building, which I believe is key in any community, relationship building, they will create that same environment in their new community and they don't have the same opportunities to bond with their new residents as they did in their previous community and form relationships and understand. And I don't want to necessarily say how things are done here, but in Evanston does have a uniqueness when it comes to its interaction with community, its neighbors and friends and family, and can be very tight knit in that sense. And sometimes outsiders that come in that don't fit into that mold can be viewed less than positively.
And it doesn't matter what your income bracket is.
Exactly.
If you were not born in Evanston, yeah,
Right.
you are not part of, you got to work yourself into that fabric. You got to spend years trying to get into that tight knit. Yeah, it doesn't matter how much money you have.
Exactly. Exactly. Evanston and Evanstonians, there's a mentality to being an Evanstonian that comes in, and people understand. People will view faces they've seen. I've been in other cities across the country, and you see someone from Evanston, you know, I may have not have interacted with you, but I know you're from Evanston, and vice versa. And people see you across the city and other places. There's just a different mentality. There's a different feeling of camaraderie with Evanstonians, which makes it difficult when outside influences, especially those negative, come into the city. Evanston is very quick to take action on certain things that come into the community, which I commend. When violence peaks in Evanston, Evanstonians come together immediately to deal with that. When murders begin to peak in Evanston, Evanstonians take action immediately. So they don't sit and wait for someone else to do. Evanstonians believe in taking action.
Okay, so the action to make sure that Black Evanston keeps their property in the family. Tell the people what action needs to take place. First, they need to come to your next event.
Most definitely, most definitely, and that's October 19th at Family Focus. We're going to be there at 11 a.m., and we're going to speak again about housing and understanding how to move forward, and in maintaining property, making sure that our families have this legacy, making sure that they have this heritage, and understanding there will be some financial literacy opportunities for persons, as well as employment opportunities, as well as extended educational opportunities. Sometimes we need to take advantage of the time frame, get some additional certificates, go back to school in order to be competitive, in order to move forward, to hang on to our property. We have to understand that
And clear and make that clear.
Yes.
Not necessarily college, university. Sometimes it's a trade school.
correct.
You know, I
Correct.
think that should really be taught
there
to
are
young
multiple levels of education. As a matter of fact, we're working right now with the Evanston Black contractors to make sure that those youth that are not necessarily excited about going off to post-secondary school have an opportunity to learn a trade where they can become employed. And we've got a major project going on with CTA right now. And those that are in the trades, those that have these skills, are going to be able to gain employment and are going to be able to do some very positive things for themselves as far as that project if they've gained some skills.
See, I like you, Ken. You're about, well, one, informing, and then giving them something to do when the conversation is over. When school is out at your event, you've got this information. Now, here's the first step you need to take.
Most definitely. We always have to have our homework. We've always got something to do.
That's what it's about. It's about action. Otherwise, nothing moves. It's just talk.
Exactly. And people have seen enough of that, which is why it makes it difficult when not-for-profit organizations come in. They have sessions. Sometimes they're poorly attended because that's how they're viewed, as more talk. We've heard this. A lot of the community residents, they could host these webinars, seminars, workshops, and et cetera, because they've heard that. It's all been there, done that. But the action that's come out of it, it needs to be something that's boots have to hit the ground following the event. and create something that indicates we're serious about what we're talking about. And in our communities, we want to motivate people and give them the opportunities to take an action that is actually going to change their possibilities for success, that no one is doing it for them, but doing it with them. And they have the ability to empower. If we're not empowering people, we're not doing our job.
Now, what do you say to some people in the community who they're comfortable with the way things are, but at the same time, they're angry with what's going on. They see what's going on, but they don't want to speak up. They don't want to attend events like community conversations. They want others to do the fight, but they want to stay safe at home without the non-African Americans seeing them upset about what's happening. Mm-hmm. What do you say to people like that? Eventually,
everyone in any adverse situation, that situation is going to creep into your door. And you've got to realize that it's only a matter of time when these situations come about. So it's best to take action before it gets to your door. Same thing we say when violence happens. It doesn't have to be my child to understand that I need to take an action. If I don't take an action when it's your child, it very well may be my child. If I don't take an action when it's your job, it very well could be my job. So we want to empower people to understand that you can't worry about those that view what you're doing as aggression towards them. For me to be pro-black is not anti-white. Okay, it just says that I'm empowering my own to understand that we have a history of stolen culture, stolen heritage, stolen history, stolen everything. And those that attempt to restore aren't bashing another culture. That doesn't have to happen. It isn't necessary. And to use that stereotypical line, I have a lot of white friends. I have some white friends that are very close to me that I think are extremely responsible, very receptive, and very inclusive. The fact that I could count on them and call on them at any time to help support something I'm doing at any given time. And I don't believe that those people that know me take offense at me being pro-black or trying to educate other blacks at taking control of their history, taking control of their destiny. Because after all, we've been told for years, pick yourself up by your own bootstraps. Well, that's easy to say for someone unless you realize they have no boots and they have nothing. Everything has been taken, and there is an uneven playing field whether people want to admit it or not. So we have to acknowledge the facts that we are dealing from a deficit. And so just to come up to an even stage is going to take a lot of work, much less to actually try to compete and achieve and do some other things. So we're just at the point where we need to recognize that there are inhibitions, there are obstacles, there are prohibitions, there are things that have happened systematically, institutionally, and culturally to hold back people of color. And so we've got to cross those bridges first. We've got to deprogram the minds of people that are going forward to understand that you need to do it. No one's going to do it for you. You've got to do it for yourself. You've got to take a part in it. You have a role. And if everyone plays a role, we can become very successful. If people sit back, the other people have to carry the load. The other people have to do some of the work. And it makes it more difficult. And a lot of times people fall. They get weary. They get overwhelmed, and they don't complete the work, and things stop. And that stop and start process is discouraging to a lot of people. They want to see steady progress. They want to see steady growth and development. So we need everyone involved to do that, because everyone is involved. Everyone wants to take part in the victory celebration, so everyone's got to take part in the work.
That's right. That's right. So, Ken, were you always this conscious, or did something like happen and you got slapped in the face with reality, you know, like Stacey Dash recently?
Yes, most definitely.
How did you get to this level of consciousness?
I feel like I was on a path. As an Evanstonian, as a person who was taught to work hard and get an education and do all of these things, you would get placed. I've had pretty decent employment opportunities. I always found myself the only black in an AP class at Evanston, the only black in this office, the only black in corporate, in regional management, the only black in this particular area. And you always had to strive to work forward, and that would be the first one to tell you if you work hard and you did all this good stuff, there's very little racism if you did that, until I found out that was not true at all. Okay, there were a lot of ceilings, a lot of closed doors, a lot of areas that we couldn't get into, a lot of cases, and one in particular working for a bank where a coworker, she just could not stand our supervisor, couldn't stand her at all, and she called her names constantly, and she had every name other than what her real name was constantly. And I was dealing with a training for the Federal Reserve Bank, and I was listening to the most monotoned individual ever give me information on banking regulations, which isn't the most exciting thing in the world to begin with, and I began to doze off. Well, this person reported me to this person that they hated, they couldn't stand, because the person didn't want me in this position. And so I found that they were willing to stand together in spite of the fact that the woman couldn't stand each other. So it became a racial issue regardless of, and then I began to see things in
That's
other
deep.
areas that indicated my blackness always is a factor. It's never about my work ethic. And we've said recently, if it was all about work ethics, blacks would own a lot more than they own. They'd have a lot of businesses.
Tell me about it.
This country would, we'd have things, no problem.
I've worked myself to complete exhaustion, to being in the emergency room. I've worked myself.
Most definitely. Most definitely. And I've experienced the same thing even as a business owner. When I first started, I ran an accounting firm, and I had clients in Highland Park and Deerfield and downtown Chicago and et cetera. And I was doing well, but there were always areas, and I always felt like, you can't get any more trusted than dealing with someone's money. Okay, you can't be any more on the level. And when I worked for the university, I had an unsigned check for $2 million that didn't have a payee listed, and the controller said, I'm letting you do this because, $2 million isn't enough to go to a non-extradition country. So, we're trusting you. But that's the level of trust that they had and understood that certain things could happen. So my thought was you just can't be any more trusted than someone that deals with someone's money. And as a person of color, you have to really be careful, because if anything goes wrong, you're the first person they're going to look at.
Oh, yes.
You're going to be the first person they're going to view. And as time went on, I realized there were a lot of things that happened in spite of a lot of meetings when we first started the not-for-profit, and it seemed to be that this is a repetitive cycle here, and there's some things that are happening to perpetuate this issue of poverty and ignorance in the community, not to end it, but to keep it going. And we were talking about poverty pimps and people that benefit from low middle income families, people that benefit from serving them, people that benefit from giving aid and programming to them, that really don't want to stop this problem, really don't want to elevate
some of them look
people.
like us.
Exactly. And we had to realize that is the case. People aren't really looking for the solution to this problem. But as a person that deals with faith-based ministries as well, we found that people were becoming increasingly discouraged because they couldn't get out of this hole. They just couldn't get out of it. And we're praying and we're fasting and we're going through biblical principles and realizing that there is actually a preconceived design plan to stop us. And if we don't recognize that, we'll never move forward. The truth is that someone doesn't want us to achieve. Someone doesn't want us out of the hole. Someone doesn't want us on a level playing field. And if not, they wouldn't do so much to hamper us. When people are skilled and level, those in competition, athletics, say for instance, Michael Jordan appreciated the good competition, because if I gonna prove I'm the best, I need to play against the best. So when someone hampers you, when someone cuts you off at the knees, when someone does things to inhibit you, they're not saying they're the best. They're saying I'm not as good as you are, and I'm worried that you will overtake me, and then I will be out, or I will be secondary, or I won't be first. And so we've got to eliminate these inhibitions. We've got to eliminate these prohibitions and these obstacles that have stopped us, even some that are self-inflicted, in order to move forward.
Ken, I love you, man. Thank you
I love you
so
too.
much. Looking forward to the next event. One, tell people where they can contact you, and two, give them the information about this next event that I can't wait.
Fantastic. Well, you can always reach a Work of Faith Ministries at 872-216-7058, or our acronym AWOF-INC. Anywhere, Instagram, LinkedIn, wherever you want to see
Facebook.
it, your Facebook, you can find us with that acronym, AWOF-INC, and then join us on October 19th at Fleetwood, no, I'm sorry, not at Fleetwood, at Family Focus at 11 a.m. for the Understanding Institutional Racism next portion, which is about housing. And hopefully I'm not announcing all of the panelists at this point, but we've got another good group of panelists coming in. Hopefully Malika will also be there as moderator for this event again, and we'll do some great things in this city.
All right. Thank you so much, Ken.
Thank you.
Always. This is Malika, Evanston Live TV. Stay tuned.